welcome back to the channel. I'm back with some more study notes, and today's focus is going to be faults in cake making. It's one of the few topics that's coming on the upcoming CSEC examination, so let's get straight into it. Now, as you know, cakes make every occasion special, and a good quality cake is one that has good color, texture, flavor, shape, and taste. However, oftentimes during preparation, things don't usually go as planned, and as such, today we're going to be looking at some of the common faults that can happen when baking cakes. So one of the first faults that I'm going to look at is curdling of the uncooked cake mixture or the cake batter. Now, 4 causes are highlighted here. The first one being the butter and the sugar have not been creamed adequately, and as you know, for the creaming method, this is one of the first steps to cream the butter and the sugar together until it is light and fluffy. The second reason could be that the ingredients were too cold. Now, quite often, cold ingredients do not incorporate good together or sometimes at all. So when baking cakes, it is often advised that ingredients be brought to room temperature before using. Another reason could be that the eggs were added too quickly or the batter was overbeaten. Now, when baking cakes, you have to find the right balance. Remember that baking is a science and everything must be done according to the recipe and must be done properly. Now, let's say you're making a cake and you realize that your batter has curdled. You don't need to throw it away. All you need to do is add 1 to 2 tablespoons of flour and mix until all the ingredients are thoroughly combined and you have a smooth consistency. Another common fault in cake making is if the cake has sunken in the middle. Now, as we go through the causes, you'll realize that I will bring up the word gluten quite often. Now, simply put, gluten is a protein that is found in wheat and other cereal products, and without it, baked products won't hold its shape. The first cause could be that too much sugar or syrup was added, causing the gluten to be over softened so that it collapses. Number 2 could be that there was too much raising agent used, which would in turn cause the gluten to overstretch and collapse. Number 3 could be that the cake batter was undercooked, or it could simply be because the oven door was opened too frequently or before the gluten has set. So let us look at some visual representations of cakes that have sunken in the middle. So the first image you're seeing is an overview, and for the second image it's from a side view. So you can clearly see that there is a high rise toward the end of the cake and in the middle it is sunken. Now let's say that the cake has risen unevenly. It could be because the oven shelf was not level, which may be due to the floor on which it stands, or it could be that the cake mixture was placed too near to the source of heat, which would then in turn cause it to rise quickly on one side and not so quickly on the other side. So again, we're going to be looking at some visual representations of this cake fault. So the cake on the left, you can clearly see that it has risen unevenly as opposed to the one on the right, which has risen on the same height on both sides. Another fault in cake making could be that the fruit has sunken in the cake. Now, oftentimes recipes would call for the incorporation of actual fruits into the cake, and one of the reasons why the fruit may sink could be that the mixture was too wet, therefore the fruit cannot be held evenly throughout, or it could be that the fruit itself was too wet, which would in turn add too much liquid to the cake, or it could be that too much raising agent or sugar has been used, which would then cause the structure to collapse and the fruit to sink. One way to prevent this from happening is to lightly dust the fruit in flour, and what would happen is the fruit would then stick to the cake batter and it would prevent it from sinking. Now let's look at some images of fruits that have sunken to the bottom of the cake as opposed to one that is evenly distributed. In the event that the cake is stuck to the pan, it could be because the cake pan was not greased properly, or it could be that the cake was allowed to cool in the pan for too long. So to prevent this from happening, you want to ensure that you grease your pan well. Now this can be done by using parchment paper, or you can use non-stick cooking spray. You could even use butter or oil and then lightly flour the pan before adding the cake batter. Another way to prevent this from happening is to allow the cake to cool in the cake pan for just 15 minutes before transferring it onto a cooling rack. Another fault could be that the cake is dry. Now, this can be caused by many reasons. So it could be that the oven was too hot, or it could be that the cake was overcooked. It could also mean that too little liquid was used when mixing the cake batter, or it could mean that too much chemical raising agent has been used. To prevent this from happening, you want to ensure that your oven is set at the correct temperature. You want to ensure that you also follow the correct measurements on your recipe, and you want to ensure that you don't allow your cake to bake for too long. If the cake has a peak and a cracked top, it could be because the oven temperature is too high, which would then cause the mixture to rise rapidly and overcook. Or it could mean that the cake was placed too high in the oven, or it could simply mean that too much mixture was added to the size cake pan. Now let's say that the cake has a hard sugary crust. It could be because the sugar was too coarse for the mixture and it did not dissolve in time, or it could mean that too much sugar was used for the recipe. If the cake has a heavy, dense texture, it could mean that the mixture curdled and did not retain enough air, or it could mean that the oven temperature was too low and the cake was not cooked for long enough. It could also mean that the mixture was overbeaten, or it could mean that there was too much liquid in the mixture or too little raising agent was used. Here are some examples of cakes that would have a coarse or dense texture. I hope you found this video useful. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content.